Okay, I will call to order the Board of Trustees of Batavia Public Library, our regular meeting on Tuesday, 16th of October, 2018. Would everybody please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Blodgett. Kulata. Here. Beachman.
Here.
Garrett. Here. Enders.
Here.
Kinsey.
Here.
Smith. Here.
Thank you. Comments from the audience? Seeing none, I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes from our regular meeting on the 18th of September, expenditures for September, an ordinance levying an additional tax of 0.02% for buildings and equipment for library purposes and maintenance, repairs, and alterations of library buildings and equipment in the Batavia Public Library District in the counties of Kane and DuPage, Illinois, for the fiscal year of 2017 to 2018.
Didn't know how to stop that one.
Yeah. And a resolution determining the amount of money estimated to be necessary to be raised by the tax levy. And our insurance policies. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thanks, Rich.
I second.
Thank you, Jenny. Roll call vote, please.
Blodgett. Kulata.
Aye.
Beachman.
Aye.
Garrett.
Aye.
Enders.
Aye.
McKenzie.
Aye.
Smith. Aye.
Thank you. Next, I need a motion to approve this evening's agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Thanks, Kate.
I'll second.
Thank you, Joanne. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Financial reports. We have the working budget, our statement of revenue and expenditures, and our investment reports.
And sorry, unless there are questions, I'm going to defer my time to our auditor, Sean Hickey.
Okay.
Is here from the Water Back and Audit.
Great. All right, jump right into that.
Good evening. I'm not Jamie Wilkie, as your agenda says. She's a partner. She was a little under the weather tonight, so she asked me if I could come and do the presentation of the audit. And I'm a manager with Lauterbach and Amon. I worked on the audit with Joe. So, of course, the first thing I'd like to do is extend my gratitude to Joe and his staff. They do great work, and certainly was easy to work with and to get our audit done. And Jamie would reiterate that as well. So appreciate that, Joe. What I want to do is just, before I start, I always make sure everybody has the same documents that I'm looking at. First is the annual financial report. And then the second, you might have a bound copy, is the management letter, the stapled copy. I'm not going to go through the whole report in detail, because that would take way too long. But I just want to point out kind of some highlights of things that we think are important for a board to know based on the audit. So the first thing I'd like to go through is the annual financial report. If you turn to the first two pages, the independent auditor's report, it's a couple pages in, and it's on Lauterbach and Amon's letterhead. So this is our opinion, audit opinion on the financial statements. Not going to read through it, but what you would need to know is that it's an unmodified opinion, and that means it's a clean opinion, and that's the best opinion you can get on your financial statement. So that's really good news. Behind that is management discussion and analysis. Again, I'm not going to go through in detail, but I always like to encourage the boards to, if you're going to read anything in the financial statements, the management discussion and analysis is probably the best way to get the information on the financial statements. And the reason being is it's more narrative format, and it is in comparative format. So it's a place where it'll show current year activity versus last year's activity. Behind the management discussion and analysis is the basic financial statements. If you could, in the basic financial statements on page 8, is the statement of revenues and expenditures and change in fund balance. So this presents your funds, activity, revenues, and expenditures for the year. This is probably something that you're most familiar with when you see the monthly financial statements and what the budget is based on. And so just to point out, for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018, the total column for all of your governmental funds, 3 rows up from the bottom, you had an increase in fund balance of $298,000. So basically that represents that your revenues exceeded your expenditures for the year. 2 numbers behind or below that is a little over $2.5 million, the ending fund balance. And ending fund balance really represents a reserve for future expenditures that the library has built up. After the basic financial statements are the notes to the financial statements. Again, the notes just really support the financial numbers. It presents information about your investments, as well as long-term capital assets and long-term debt, as well as detailed information on pensions, which the library employees participate in Illinois Municipal Retirement Fund. And then really in the back, there's some what we would call supplementary information. And again, this is probably something, I'm not going to go through each fund in detail, but what it does is it presents your budget to actual for the fiscal year. And that's something that you would be familiar with as you're going through the year and monitoring the budget. So really that's it on the financial report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does this indicate our level of funding for IMRF for our organization?
Yes, that's back in the supplementary information. I believe on page 33 of the financial statements, 33 and 34. And on page 34, what you'll notice is the 12/31/2017 column. IMRF is on a calendar year end, and that's why we present the information as a 12/31. And that total column, or I'm sorry, in the column 12/31/17, 3 rows up from the bottom, it's 93.27%. And so that's the funding ratio. So at this time, looking at this long-term obligation, it's a little over 93% funded.
That's good.
Were there any journal entries? So from the information you received from Joe, did you have any?
See, I'm pretty sure we didn't, but there's in our communications. Looks like we had, we would call it a report-only entry where with the trial balance, the expenditures for principal, we just break it out for report purposes, the principal and interest. But there was no other journal entries.
And then the management letter, are you going to go through that, or was that
Yes,
from
yeah.
last year? I couldn't remember.
Yeah, so there was, so if there's no other questions on the financials, the management letter, for the current year, we didn't have any new recommendations or information. We do have a prior recommendation that we just wanted to give a status on. And so the prior recommendation, there was a new government accounting standard. It's government, you might hear GASB 75 as the government accounting standard. And this related to other post-employment benefits. And what it required the library to do, and we worked with Joe to see how it would impact the library. And what the standards are having the governments do is if you provide basically health insurance to retirees, or if they're on your plan, even if they're paying 100%, there's a cost to the government. And so what it's requiring all governments to do is assess the liability and then potentially add footnote disclosures as well as maybe record it in the financial statements. The library, of course, is a smaller entity, and we worked with Joe and we were able to come up with an estimate to determine that at this point that liability would be immaterial, so we wouldn't need to necessarily add the disclosures or record it in the financial statements. It's something that we'll continue to look at every year, and potentially if some of the things change, it might be something where eventually we would have to add additional disclosures and record it in the financial statements.
Even though we don't provide post-employment health benefits?
Yes, Correct. Yeah. Oh, well, I guess do they have,
We have Cobra.
yeah, Cobra. So, yeah, this one was a little interesting because even when participants, retirees pay 100% of the premium, within the standard, they were saying that there's still this, it's called an implicit cost, because technically if they're on your plan, the government's actually paying more because you have a population of retirees that are bringing up the premium. So that one was a little kind of a theoretical, to me, kind of a concept. And again, we worked with Joe and determined at this point it wasn't material enough to really report in the financials. Any other questions?
All right, thank you. Yeah, Joe, thanks to you and your staff too, because it's, obviously it takes a lot of effort to put this together and keep everything in order here, and it always has been, so. Great.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so that's 7B. 7C is tentative form of an ordinance approving and adopting the amended annual budget appropriation for library purposes for fiscal year 2018 to 2019.
And this is being presented for information on November 7th. The board will have a public hearing and then a special meeting following that to actually adopt this ordinance.
Okay.
And we have already got this ordinance available for public examination for anyone who wishes to do that. Copies are available at the reference desk and in the business office, and as part of the process, we present this information to the board as well.
Excellent. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that?
My only question was on the total books and other materials, the 401,000. That's 10% of the total budget?
This is not the working budget. The working budget is our line item budget. This is a statutory document that's called annual budget and appropriation. And these are estimates based on last year's approved budget that will lead to the levy for money that we will start using after July 1st of next year.
Gotcha.
Did I say that right, Joe? So it's, yeah, and the purpose for this is to ensure that in case the referendum passes, that we're able to capture all the funds that the voters want us to take.
Does anybody else have any questions about this? Okay. Board education on per capita grants.
No, new fiscal year, new chapter to review from the standards for Illinois Public Libraries. I've got two relatively minor corrections, and the subject heading, the actual year of the standards is 2014, not 2009. That was version 2, not version 3. And on page 4, core standard number 16, somehow I blinked on changing DuPage library system to reaching across Illinois library system, which we are now part of. So I apologize for those oversights. We've reviewed some of these core standards before, so in order to avoid retyping everything, I cut and pasted some of them. And I go through and I review to make sure that the answers haven't changed, and Blu-ray pass that one. So this particular standard is for personnel. We have not reviewed that particular standard for a number of years. And the as in past similar reports, the first section are applicable core standards, and then I evaluate those on the right-hand column, and with any explanation or other notes. And then the second section are the personnel standards, same format, just the standards spelled out, and then notes related to each of those standards. So rather than belabor all the pages of standards here, I will just ask if you have any questions about any of them.
Can you remind me, when there's an instance where there's no policy, is there a rationale? So for instance, on page 3, middle, service to patrons with disabilities, and you say no policy. What does that mean?
That means that we've never adopted a formal policy spelling out how we might serve patrons with disabilities. The one above that is a reference policy, and in that particular instance, I know from past records that at some point the library board decided to endorse guidelines for reference service rather than adopting a formal policy. So there's no, it's more just factual information. There's no reason that we haven't, other than that is not a policy that we've spelled out in detail. We do serve patrons with disabilities. We have various types of functional equipment, and we also provide personal service for if someone cannot reach particularly high on a shelf, our staff will pull things down for people. We have some magnifying capabilities on computer terminals and such. So we do look at this. We've just never adopted a formal policy for it. So, and again, there's no particular, I think access to materials probably is a similar one to that. And I don't know if Joanne or Stacy has any further memory on those particular ones. I think it's something that I think we felt we were handling without adopting a formal statement. That said, we could certainly do some research and develop a policy and adopt a formal statement.
And there's no requirement to have a policy for each of these?
No, the core standard is the library has other policies as appropriate to the library's operation. And so Appendix M is what is referred to there, and this topic recommended for public use of the library policy. Some libraries, I think, may have a more omnibus type public use of the library policy. Others will have, like we do, more specific individual policies. And there's no, it's not mandatory that we have any given policy. It's more what we in the board in particular feels might be appropriate for our use. And this is one that's, I think, never been flagged, for that reason. So.
I just have a couple quick questions.
Sure.
Top of page 2, core 6, spilling over for the top of page 2. We say okay for all of these policies, but then we have no policy where it says the library adopts no policy.
That means referring to the Code of Ethics of the American Library Association.
But then you have an okay after that, after.
Oh, that was, no, the okay is incorrect.
The okay is incorrect, not the
Yes.
no policy.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I blinked on that one too. Let's see here. Yeah, we do have the board did approve or adopt the ethics statement for public library trustees. I found no information in our records as to why the board may not have adopted the other policy, although the other one is broader. The first one relates specifically to board members. That may be why that was adopted. We could look at that one if you like.
I
Yeah. more just curious
More
about the other.
curious. And then page 7, number 11. Public library trustees and administrators are aware of federal and state and local statutes and regulations, and you have uncertain and discussion with trustees. Do we need to have that discussion?
Yeah, the question is, to what extent all the members of the board are aware of these various regulations. So going into it, since we've not actually had that discussion before, I put uncertain, but since there is actually a list here
Yeah.
of those, you now are made aware of them.
Yeah, I think we can say okay on that one.
Yeah, so again, I was being way too literal, I think. But,
But I think you could just take out the whole uncertain.
Right.
Oh, yes, no,
Because you
I'm-
have the okay right next to
Right.
the other thing.
Yeah, I've got the uncertain next to the trustees and the okay next to the administrators because.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. I break up this,
I see.
they've got a lot of concepts sometimes in the same sentence, so I tend to break them
That
up.
makes sense.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. So I think you can have okay.
I'm happy to do that.
Cool. Those are my questions.
Excellent. Does anybody else have any other questions? There's a lot in here, so I appreciate that you break that out so much to go through and evaluate that. Makes it easier for us to see what is happening here. Obviously, the staff and you have taken some time to make sure that we are meeting the requirements.
Well, I think it's important for us to do that, and I like to evaluate when they have specific things about staffing levels or hours of service. I think it's nice to sort of break those out so that the trustees can see sort of how we compare it.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have anything else?
Thank you for the questions and the corrections. If there's anything, any of these particular issues that any trustees would like us to pursue further, please just let me know, because you can certainly pop those onto the committee agenda and look at those further if you're interested.
I guess I would like to kind of touch on page 5, the one hard no that I saw on the list, which was under personnel standards, number 2, that our staffing levels are insufficient to carry out our mission, given our strategic plan. And just call that to the board's attention, because there's a lot in here, and it's easy to skim stuff
Yeah,
over, but I
yeah.
didn't know if
I didn't highlight
anybody
that
else noted
because,
that the way that I did.
We certainly have adequate staffing for all the basic services that are called for in the standards, and we do so much more beyond the basic level. But I think when it comes down to sufficient staffing levels, there was a time a number of years ago when the board, prior to this board, asked about expanded hours, and upon evaluation, we didn't have the staffing to do more than add 1 hour on a Sunday, for example. And we have a fair number of substitute employees, and I would argue that that is evidence that we do not have a sufficient number of regular employees to manage all the work. And a fair amount of work takes place, off-desk work takes place on the desk, especially in adult and youth services, out of necessity. So that means that suggests pretty strongly to me that there's insufficient staffing to do all the off-desk work off the desk. So that's why I'm sort of as you say, sort of a blunt no there without getting into too much explanation. But and we talk from time to time about that we touch on that issue without really digging into the weeds. So I'm glad you brought that up. One thing that I think would be appropriate for us to do, especially given some of the feedback we got from the community engagement session, is to actually explore ways and means to determine appropriate or sufficient staffing levels a little more scientifically than some of the examples I've been given. And we've had a lot on our plate the last couple of years, so I haven't actually proposed that, but I think that's, looking toward the future, that would be a helpful thing to do. It's been a number of years since we've, it's been a decade almost, I think, since we adopted the salary schedule, which we adjust, or at least review annually, but we haven't really done a classification study and really seriously looked at the salary schedule and the classifications in that, for a number of years. So that too, when you talk about staffing, I think there's some of those kind of issues that are worth looking at as we move it.
Thanks, Kate. Does anybody have anything else? Okay, thanks, George. President's report, I don't have anything. Are you gonna touch on the flyers that were mailed out?
I'd be happy to.
Okay. The only other thing is George sent an email out about the mayor's breakfast. It's coming up. I forget what the date on that is.
November 8th.
Okay. So if anybody would like to attend that, it's always a good chance to interact with our colleagues and the other government here in town and find out what's going on. So
It's a really fascinating event, and the fact that it's taking place 2 days after this year's election, I think will make it more fascinating than it has been in the past. So you're all welcome if your schedules permit.
Okay. And then there's a copy of the flyer that was mailed out to all of our residences on the referendum. So hopefully hopefully the community is seeing that and is reading up on it and is getting informed so they can make a decision.
I figured you probably all had seen this, but I
Yes.
want to make sure you all have a copy.
Yes. So,
Maybe you'll talk about it in the director's report, the turnout on the Sunday, October 7th. Was there a healthy discussion in Q&A?
Sure. I guess we're sort of moving into that sort of arena. So it was not a big turnout. Those of us that were there sort of working the event outnumbered the people, I'm afraid, that showed up for the event. But the 3 people that did come to the event were very interested. One woman said that she was there to gather information to bring back to her whole neighborhood. So I think we've seen that at other events. We've done with folks that frankly said that, I'm the one that was designated to come and get the information, and so we do that. And there were some good questions that came out of that, which that have helped us. Various of us, myself, Joanne, several of our Citizens Committee members who have helped us go out to various groups in town. We've made presentations at the beginning of a number of library-sponsored events, questions and ancestors genealogy session, and at least 2, maybe 3 how-to community sessions, books read bites, and we have the Lyceum coming up, that sort of thing. We've been to a neighborhood meeting. I was at the city council on Monday, and that went very well. I made just a short presentation as part of community comments, and Alderman O'Brien made a very positive comment about the need for maintenance and keeping maintenance current in facilities, and Mayor Schulke gave a nice little talk about the importance of the library in the community. So that was very nice, and and actually as part of that we produced a factual set of questions and answers and frequently requested facts. So I will pass these out to everyone. I want to make sure you all have a copy of those.
thank you.
And we've been giving these to, either making them available for people to pick up in certain instances, or actually handing everybody a copy of this. And it covers quite a range of information, in some cases building upon what was in the
flyer that went to everybody's home, and many people have said they've received this and have talked about that. That triggered some people coming to that session or asking questions. I've received at least one phone call this week that my number is on the bottom of each page of the question and answer packet. And so a patron who was not able to make it to the November 1st open forum called up to ask some questions, which was nice. And so it's just an interesting way to get face-to-face time. We've spoken to several community organizations. We're scheduled at River Rain and the Homestead coming up, and I have traded calls with Heritage Woods, so I'm hoping to, try to schedule something there as well. So it's, I don't know, the energy seems high. Joanne has participated in several of these. Do you have an observation you'd like to make about this process?
Just that it seems that people are very engaged when, my part of it is to kind of take people on the journey that the board has been on for the last 2 years to reach this destination, of putting the referendum on the ballot. And people seem very engaged. The people who are there, ask very, very good questions. The home party that I went to was just a really nice experience. The person who hosted it invited her neighbors, and so we were, just sitting there kind of going through the information. I have found mostly positive responses. The citizens group has also been to the school board, I believe.
Tonight, at this exact same time, we've got one representative
Right.
from that committee at the school board meeting and one representative at the park board meeting. There's some coincidence of history, all three boards meet on the same night. So we've got representatives there basically giving some a short presentation during the public, and a factual presentation.
Right. So the Citizens Committee has done an exceptionally good job of hitting all the major organizations in town and sending a speaker to provide the information for them.
And actually, we've had speakers at several of our groups that meet here as well, now that I think about it. Mothers Club, Women's Club, those sorts of groups. So we're really trying to get just as many different groups because I think we're finding, especially, but our theory was that the more people you talk to, the more those people talk to, and it sends a ripple out in the community. And so we're pretty excited about that, and we're sticking to the very factual, straightforward information.
Good. Excellent. Well, hopefully the community will take the time, as I mentioned, to learn what's here and to make a decision. So, excellent. Okay. Anything else on that or that process? So, okay. Anything else while we have your president's report here, George? Anything you want to highlight in here?
Well, are there any other comments from the board or anything else? I don't want to supersede anybody.
Oh, sorry.
No, I just want to make sure I didn't bulldoze over some of these.
Any other, good news or other comments from the board? Okay, thank you.
Director's report, one of the key things is the New Lyceum Lecture Series, which I will allow Stacy, I know she will be talking about that, so I won't steal her thunder on that. And we're moving into the fall and into the holiday season, and savings time is ending soon and things like that, but there's nothing of great moment that I included in my report. We'll get more detailed information from Joanne and Stacy, I think.
Okay. Committee.
No, I think Joanne.
Oh, I'm sorry. Leverage, of course, yes. Like,
I'm like, she's standing, I think.
I looked up, I didn't see her. Listen. Hi, Joanne.
Good evening. Just a couple of things. Actually, tonight I'm going to start before I launch right into youth services. I want to make a comment on two other departments in the library. First of all, circulation services. Last month, September, was National Library Card Sign-Up Month, so I thought you might be interested. As I mentioned in my report, circulation, Stephanie mentioned that they registered 159 new or renewed library cards. That's not the automatic renewals. That runs between 300 and 500 a month. But these are new renewals that maybe somebody's library card had expired, and so then they needed to come in, or brand new cards. And 30 of those were ones that came about from our visit to curriculum nights at the school. So Stephanie was very happy with the 159 new cards. That was an increase over last September of 42%, and is certainly above the average of about 117 registrations a month. So certainly that was they were very happy with how National Library Card sign-up went. And then I also wanted to mention promotional services. Hans Kaiser and Pat Leonard in promotional services. Hans is our graphics person and does the website. And if you were here during National Library Card Sign-Up Month, you saw the great Incredibles characters. That was the ALA theme to your card is the most incredible thing in your wallet. So he did the characters, the incredible characters, and posted them in the department. And you might say, okay, well, why are you bothering mentioning that? But it was very cute to see the kids come in, able to name all of the characters, and then want a picture of them in front of Dash or Stretch or all of the different characters. So that was very cute. And Pat was really the coordinator of our whole open house event in September, and if you're on Facebook, you may have seen that she is flooding Facebook with some great pictures and information about library events. So we really, Stephanie and Pat, as you know, are new to the library since spring, so just an opportunity to say how excited we are to have them here. And Pat is really making sure that also all those social media followers are following the library, so it's a lot of fun. Now, I'll go back to youth services. We are in the midst of our annual bookmark contest, and that's for first to fifth graders. And our theme this year is on the wings of books. So taking the lead from the bulldog that's sitting out in the lobby. So we look forward to seeing what kind of designs children bring in for that. And then we have several winners from every grade level, and we'll print those, and each children gets several of their bookmarks to hand out to friends and families, and they'll be available here in the library, and they also get a new paperback book. So it's kind of a nice way for children to show their artistic talent, but also on something that is very popular in the library. Every time some children come into the library, they're taking bookmarks, so it's a nice way to share some of the talents around in Batavia. And 4 big events are coming up within the next 2 months. First of all, Bat Fest. We're participating in that again this year at 11:30. We'll be in the Reading Garden for stories, and then followed by the Mothers Club Parade. And I just spoke with them today, and they are happy to be here for story time and then head off on the parade. Late night at the library comes up, and it's our annual after hours for 3rd to 5th graders. So if you know a 3rd to 5th grader, we'll start registration November 1st on that one, and it does fill up because it is very popular to be in the library after it's closed and do all kinds of fun things in the library. Our preschool fair will be coming up in November, so if you know of any young families in Batavia that are looking at preschools with young children, that's great. And once again, I think this is year number 19 maybe of our participation in Celebration of Lights and guest readers. And if anybody is looking to be, I know Rich has been a guest reader in the past. If anyone is interested in being a guest reader, let me know. And we'll make sure we get you set up with a book, and you're welcome to join us for that evening. And it goes from 6:15 till 7 o'clock at the Gustafson Research Center down at the Depot Museum, part of the evening's festivities. So it's a lot of fun. Mayor and Mrs. Schilke always end up the evening reading A Night Before Christmas, and everybody sings "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," and at the end of it, it's a lot of fun. So.
For the viewers at home, Bad Fest is the 27th, I think, October?
Yes, what did I say? A different
I don't know
date?
that you gave it.
Oh, I don't know. Yes, October
Yeah.
27th.
And
Yeah.
then late night is shortly.
November 9th,
Okay.
and the preschool fair is November 12th.
Okay.
So November is kind of getting into a very busy season. Otherwise, that's all I have. If you have any questions.
I see you were kind enough to take the hit and judge the brownie contest.
Yes, I judged the brownie, the taste off at the Batavia Mothers Club, and it is amazing how they make delicious brownies. I think we sampled 9. Holly was there, and the mayor was there, and the fire chief was there, as well as a police officer, and made delicious brownies. But the trick is you can only have 1 bite, because otherwise by the time you get down to number 9, you really cannot eat another brownie. So the trick is 1 bite until the end, and then you can finish your favorite.
Yes.
But it was a lot of fun. I think they did pies or something at maybe Windmill City Fest, and I am a pie lover, so I would like to do that. I'm gonna have to try to get into the pie tasting next year and save brownies for somebody else. So. Anything else? Stacy?
All right, thanks.
I'll do that brownies.
Oh, yeah, right.
A few things from Adult Services. George mentioned the upcoming New Lyceum Lecture Series event. It's coming up this Monday, October 22nd, 7 o'clock. Daniel Myers, who has served as the Executive Director of the Churchill Center, a national organization devoted to learning about Winston Churchill, is going to be here to present Working to End World War II. And the focus is on Churchill, Franklin Roosevelt, and Stalin, their collaboration during World War II. So it should be a very fascinating presentation. We're looking forward to it. Christine Edison, one of the Adult Services librarians, is fresh back from the Illinois Library Association annual conference, which she attended last week. And she presented as part of a panel discussion called Choose Your Own Adventure, Passive Programming at Your Library. She said it was very well received. She talked about some of the passive programs she does here for teens, which are back in that little alcove near the young adult collection. Things like the whiteboard where she'll ask questions and the thing fills up fast. And I always watch to see who goes over there, and people are really covert. And then they'll write these really fun, interesting answers, and I don't know who they are. So passive programming and stealthy patron activity, filling up those boards with really interesting answers. So if you ever are strolling down that end of the building, come and ask us where that is. We'll point it out. You can go and read some of the answers to the questions. And she changes those about every couple weeks. She has a new question. And finally, I just wanted to highlight home delivery service. I asked Misty Jump, who does home delivery for us, she's mentioned to me she'll come back from a visit to one of the locations and she'll say, "Oh, I gathered 3 more patrons today," and she'll be all excited. So I said, "Can you put together numbers? You know, the before and after?" And I got those just before I came into the meeting, and it really blew my mind. She said when she started in April, we had 47 people that she was serving through home delivery. At this point, 96. Wow. So she's gone, she's more than doubled. She has 49 new people. And she talked a little bit about how she does that. She said a lot of it is word of mouth, where people will say, "Oh, she's often referred to as the library lady," and she's good with that. She said, "There's a library lady, she can bring you stuff." She said the other thing is she talks to people. So she'll be in the elevator, she'll be sitting on a bench, just gathering things up, and people will walk by and she will bring them in. And she said, next up, the program coordinator at XTAM over at the Homestead has asked her to go door to door to talk about the service to those who may not know about it and may not be using the service. So those numbers are just growing, and we're serving ever more greater numbers of people and delighting them with the materials we can bring from the library. So it does the heart good. Any questions? Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Now we can. No facilities, finance?
So we met, the things we discussed are the 3 items that were on the consent agenda relating to some ordinance around levying additional tax, as well as the insurance policies that Joe presented his process for going through that, and we talked through that and understood that it was good enough to be put on the consent agenda, and no additional discussion was really needed, but the information is on in your packet about that. So that was really what we talked about.
Okay, thank you. No outreach. Services, we met briefly to discuss goal setting for George and had a short discussion, then tabled it, and we'll continue with it at the next services committee next time we have one. Which I don't, are we having committee meetings? We have to determine that, whether we're going to have committee meetings in November?
There's no reason not to
Okay.
I think
there's
we
a need
should.
to.
Yeah.
Well, for services.
Yeah, we'll have
I
to
think
figure out which
that-
day we're going to do it, because it would be election night. I don't know if we want to do them that night, so we'll have to figure that out.
Finance, I know we don't need to do it because we,
Yeah, finance, right.
yeah.
So I have a meeting election.
Okay.
Voter.
Yeah. Before 6:30. That's right. That's right. I always go in the morning. It's always nice.
Vote tomorrow.
Or Chicago.
Yes. All right. Batavia Public Library Foundation. Like, when it's not here. Do you know anything about that, George?
I do. At the last meeting,
Okay.
there was not a quorum at the last meeting, so there was discussion, but no real action at the last meeting. But, elections are coming up for that board. You know, that one of the directors is not running for re-election, and another one is anticipating moving south to Florida, and then the third one is now spending part of the year in Georgia. So I think we're facing, that board is facing a need for some new members and some reorganization probably. So I'll keep you posted. On the bright side, there is, we anticipate probably in November getting the final report on Bulldogs Unleashed and how much money that project raised, which will be split evenly 3 ways among the 3 foundations that were part of it. And I'm reasonably certain that the total is over $70,000. So
Wow.
we'll see what the final figure actually is.
Do we have a plan for where that money's going to be spent?
Well, it goes to the Library Foundation Board, and so
And they have a,
they have some projects and things, and they do some grants each year to the library, and I'm sure some of it will probably be used to help cover the cost of fundraising for additional money. I think usually some of that goes to the. That's a pending discussion for them exactly how they want to do that.
Okay. Thank you, George. Friends of the Batavia Public Library, Joanne?
Friends had another book sale last Saturday, and I think this might be a record. They brought
It seemed
in
like by all the emails.
$1,286.50.
Nice.
I'm always fascinated by these numbers because that means 50-cent books and dollar books. So well over 1,000 books had to go
Some
out.
were 25.
Except the children's are 25
Wow.
cents. So it's an amazing accomplishment that group of Batavia library supporters accomplished. The other thing they did was approved grants for the library. It's that time of the year when they take the money that they have made at the book sale and provide grants for the library. So they kind of did it in stages this year. At the last meeting, they approved $8,900 to be grant money for the library. That included, excuse me, the Trivia Bee for Literacy, which is something they've sponsored for years and years. So the library has a team that won last year, if I remember correctly. Okay.
But who's counting?
Or who's on the team?
As long as we beat certain other people, we're happy. So, they're a major sponsor of One Book, One Batavia each year, so they are donating $1,500 for that. They are the founding sponsor, I believe, for the Winter Reading Club, and they're providing $2,000 for that, $4,000 for the Summer Reading Club, and $1,000 for the Science and Art Fair. And then at their next meeting, they'll be determining additional grants. The other thing, Backfest was mentioned. The Friends always have a table set up right out here in the lobby before the story time, where they sell scary books, and they also sell coupons. You know, the coupons that allow you to go to their book sale and get a 50-cent book for a quarter. So, so it's always fun. They're dressed in costume, and so they'll be busy.
And when is their rare book sale or their?
The rare book sale will be
December 8th, I
in
think.
December, I think it's December the 8th.
Okay,
And that's held in this room.
right.
And that's a really interesting sale. And maybe we talked about it before, but it's old, you know, maybe some first editions, maybe some signed copies of first editions, but also beautiful coffee table books and just really interesting things that get donated.
Yeah, thanks. I wanted to make sure we highlight that event. Link?
The next meeting is on November 15th, and
Okay.
I anticipate walking out of that meeting with a check in my hand, and in fact, I'm not sure if we really haven't talked about this in the office yet because it's still a month away, but we need to deposit that check more or less immediately because they want to clear the books basically and close the bank account. So that money will go into our library fund surplus until the end of the fiscal year when the board will then adopt an ordinance to place it, for example, the special reserve fund. Joe and I have discussed options, and probably special reserve fund I think is floated to the top as probably the most important option. It could also be used for other smaller one-time expenses if there's some project that really needs to take place, but capital asset plans need to take place. So we'll make that happen. So that's November 15th.
Okay. BATV, Rich?
Yeah, two things. Football, very successful football season continues and getting ready for whatever needs to be done in the last game and as well as in the playoffs. And they also had board elections. Alan Wolf probably will continue for one more year as president, but there are a number of different changes just because people have been doing it for a while as well as Alan. So there were some changes to the board makeup in terms of moving around some of the positions, but not much in terms of new members that were taking any positions at all.
Okay.
That's about it.
All right, thank you. Future agenda items, we have a list here. We have our special meeting on the 7th of November and our regular meeting on the 20th of November. The two key ones to note. In December, we often do not meet.
Right. You can decide that tonight, or a lot of times with the November meeting, the board has a
We'll wait.
little discussion over whether there's a need to meet think in my tenure, it's been one December meeting,
Okay,
14 years.
okay. All right, next meetings or events, 152nd anniversary of the library services is this month. Daylight saving time, and then general election on the 6th of November, so I hope everybody will go out and exercise your rights to vote. Does anybody, I guess that's all I have. I need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thanks, Mike.
I second.
Thanks, Jenny. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.